But the point is not that we do it or that we don't, but where do moral choices come from? What is the right thing to do? I think that's a valid question even for us, and I think it is tough for us. Because one of the difficulties for a liberal, non-creedal church is we say it's your decision what you believe. We're not going to tell you what to do. And that means you could be wrong. Yeah. Even if we let you make up your own mind, that doesn't mean you're right. Someone once said, well, you know, you liberals, before I was here, said, is there anything you liberals don't allow? I said, yes, cannibalism. Seems pretty straightforward to me. Part of the ironies of the non-liberal environment is that they think if you don't do everything right, you do nothing right. And I want to establish a middle ground, not of partially right and partially wrong, but of not entirely right and not entirely wrong. And that's why being morally competent is important, because you'll be faced with choices almost every day where you have to decide. The rules won't be in the book. Even the Bible equivocates a lot, which is why I read that parable from Jesus today. Remember, this is Jesus, the perfect guy, Mr. Perfect. Remember, and he's telling the story of the unjust steward. And the story, if you remember, is how a rich man figured out that his employee was cheating him. And so what does the employee do? He goes out and cheats him again. And what does the rich man do? He congratulates him for cheating him twice. Now, if you read the scripture, there's a lot of stuff after that about how it's justified. But no biblical scholar I've run into can really figure this one out. It doesn't make any sense. In the end, Jesus is saying it's okay to be bad. And this is hard when you want Jesus and the book he's in to be right, because if the book is telling you to do bad things, either you're disagreeing with the book or you have no clue about right and wrong. That's the trouble with book-based morality. It really says, do what's in the book. Well, it says here I'm supposed to cheat you twice. No, but you have to do it literally. Well, over here it says I'm not supposed to eat pork. Well, that's what they did before. Over here it says that I shouldn't mix linen and flax in my garments. Should I not do that either? Well, you see, you get into a big argument when you try to live by the book. But then if you don't have any standards, you're always making up the rules as you go. It's hard. It's hard. It's a troubling parable because it reminds us that moral decision-making is never easy and there's no sure guide to get it right. So it seems Jesus, even Jesus, the perfect guy, is saying, sometimes I don't know. It means asking what is good and bad every time it comes up. If you remember last week, I said that when we try to grow our souls, one of our real hope, our basic hope, is the prayer of Socrates, to make the outer man, in my case, and the inner man be as one, that my actions and my thoughts and my feelings and my deeds should all cohere. But that's a moral question too. Am I living by my values? Am I doing what I think? And we all cheat, let's be honest. According to one measurement, Peter Singer, who was a great philosopher in Princeton, he thinks everyone should be able to live quite adequately, a household of four, for $40,000 a year. If you disagree with him, better read his book and discover how much you're already fudging the bet. David Platt, a new evangelical preacher out in the middle of the country, 27 years old, just wrote a book saying, if you make more than $50,000 a year, you should give the rest away because you don't need more than that. And according to a New York Times Gallup poll, we found out that anything north of $75,000 a year, you're not going to get happy, you're going to get less happy. And yet, I don't see many people turning back their money. We hedge our bets. We all cheat a little bit. Some of us, not all. I'm going to venture that every one of us who has a partner, a spouse, a wife, or a husband, at some point has done this bit of moral calculus. I can say the absolute truth, or I can stay married. your laughter tells me I'm not too far off. So did you do the bad thing? Did you do the wrong thing by perhaps lying or equivocating? No. What you've done is you've done the moral thing, because the moral question is not how to keep you pure. It's how to make the world better. It really does come down to that old golden rule thing. We all know it. Confucius said it. Jesus said it. In fact, one of the great stories in the Hebrew tradition is of the great Rabbi Hillel, who was being taunted by the Romans, a Roman soldier who dared him to stand on one foot and recite the whole of the Torah, which is a pretty big book, right? And he said, "Do not do to another what you would not have done to yourself." That's the whole of the Torah. And then he put his foot down. And then he said, "Go and study." What we forget in the golden rule is that really works, but applying it everywhere is really hard. If you wouldn't want someone to hurt your feelings, you don't hurt them back. Does that trump telling the absolute truth? Well, sometimes yes. Sometimes you have to, as Emily Dickinson says, tell the truth, but tell it slant, so that it gets in without doing damage. And I want to remind you that liberal religion got its start with this question. It wasn't, are the miracles true, or is the Bible right? It got started with Martin Luther saying, these Romans over here say I should do this, but they're doing that instead. I see a disconnect between word and deed. The Reformation started as a moral conundrum. Why, if they say, be poor, is the church trying to get rich? Why, if they say this, do they do that? The moral hypocrisy is what propelled the Protestant Reformation, and it propelled it step after step until it got so far away from the original that we ended up with all of you folks here at this church that doesn't belong anywhere, because we kept questioning the hypocrisy question, the morality question. It was only when we asked, is this the right thing? Is this the good thing? We asked it of others and ourselves, that we took the hard steps away from what was assumed to be true. In the Hindu tradition, there's a great book called the Bhagavad Gita. It's in the middle of a much larger book. And the crux of that tradition, of that story, is a dilemma by a prince named Arjuna who was about to go to war against his own brothers. And he asks his charioteer, who happens to be the god Vishnu in disguise, what he should do. He's torn. He thinks he should not hurt another human being, and yet at the other hand, he is being told by his father to go to war. He's torn over a moral dilemma, and the god Vishnu reveals to him that he has to find what his duty is here, that it's larger than his heart. I'm going to suggest to you, because we are romantic people, we are emotional people. We say we're intellectuals, but we use the intellectualism to cover a very, very tender-heartedness in us. That something larger than our minds is our heart, and something larger than our hearts is our duty to others, that we have a responsibility that is even larger than our feelings. And that's where that golden rule comes in. Our duty is to make the world better.